Goals, to help you understand the basics of Priority Matrix, understand and apply what's called the Eisenhower Matrix, and then walk you through how to prioritize your tasks, projects, and emails, show you basic collaboration features to prioritize team tasks, and then learn how to use Priority Matrix on Microsoft Teams and Outlook. This is your Priority Matrix checklist. I want to show you what you can do within just 30 days of using Priority Matrix. Today is day 0. And so what we focus on is actually getting started. What that means is after today's presentation, you should be installing Priority Matrix on all your platforms, whether that's Mac, Windows, Microsoft Teams, Outlook, web. Priority Matrix exists on all of those devices. And one of the things that makes us unique is the being everywhere. And so that allows you to always be able to check on your priorities, capture the things that you need to do, and actually just get them done. And then also, I want you to actually create your first personal and team projects. And so we're going to actually talk about what this all means as we walk through the presentation. But these are some of the things that you want to make sure that you do, which is to start tracking the work that you have to do and prioritize and capture everything that's currently in your brain or on sticky notes or whatever it is. So then you're actually able to focus and prioritize and work on the things that matter. And then by day 5, within a week, you should be reviewing your priorities with your team members. So it's not just you anymore, but it's the people that you work with. How do you know if everyone's on the same page if you don't explicitly bring up and surface up those priorities? And then you start reprioritizing. And so this is where, once you're comfortable writing down your priorities, then you start looking at them and finally realizing, wait a minute, these are the things I shouldn't do. These are the things I should focus on, and so forth. And then also check in with your manager to ensure alignment. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen over and over again is that we work on things because we think it's important or they're important, but not necessarily align with the people that we work with. And so you can think about other stakeholders, right, that you work with on a day-to-day basis. And so your manager, of course, is the most obvious one, which is how do you share with them your priorities and then in a way get alignment to what they think their priorities should be. And so that's, within a week, you should be sharing that Priority Matrix that you're building with your other colleagues. So then you can actually just start discussing the challenges that you face. And one thing I want to emphasize is that if you use Priority Matrix and you're finding that it's hard to prioritize, it's hard to decide what goes where, and then you're having hard conversations with your managers and your colleagues and your customers and your clients, that means you're using Priority Matrix correctly. It means you're surfacing up all of those disagreements that's been, sitting in the background that no one dares to bring up. And so, by day 5, you're achieving that. And then within a month, by day 30, you're not just looking at your own tasks, you're reprioritizing your team and organization goals. And so what this means is that now you're really questioning, wait a minute, where am I spending my time to be in alignment with the rest of my team, in alignment with my entire organization? And then hopefully by then too, you're creating a habit of prioritizing your tasks and emails. Priority Matrix really is a combination of not just tracking your work, but also prioritizing your emails. That's probably the number one reason why a customer comes to Priority Matrix, is to take control of emails, because that's where we tend to get a lot of work assigned to us. And then lastly, and if you're in absolute control of your priorities, you're not just eliminating your time wasters, but you're focusing and focusing and focusing on what really matters. And so again, this is your checklist. If you ever forget, what you're doing with Priority Matrix, you can always come back to this video and look at this checklist and see if you're achieving these particular milestones. So Priority Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software that helps at 3 different levels. The first is at the individual level. We're helping you prioritize your tasks and emails. But then as you prioritize and you're writing down the things that you have to do, you can actually be aligned with your team, because imagine if all your team members are able to go and also prioritize their work, then you can actually have these meaningful conversations. And then as your team uses Priority Matrix, your whole organization can actually create what's called a single source of truth. So what that means is it allows you and everybody else within your organization to be able to go to Priority Matrix and know exactly what the priorities are for the rest of the organization and whether or not you're going in the right direction. So let's start with the fundamental concept behind Priority Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really like about this quote is that it helps us understand and think about the work that we do. So imagine this for a second. You got up this morning. What did you do first? You probably checked your emails, right? And so if you look at your emails, which email did you look up at first? It's probably that last email that came in. And then which one do you respond to? Probably that last email that came in, the email that you just read, right? And so if you think about how we spend our time, we tend to focus on the things that are coming at us at this moment. And so either, it's somebody, opening the office door and asking you a question, whether it's that last email that a client or a team member just sent, or a task that someone delegated you. We end up spending so much time addressing those things that are coming in, that we sometimes forget whether or not we're working on the tasks that are truly important to help us meet the goals for today, for this week, for this month, for this quarter, for this year. And so, and instead of having a task list, so if I ask you to write down the 15 things you have to do, instead of just writing in a task list and having, from top to bottom and then decide arbitrarily what to work on, instead, you take those 15 items and you ask a simple question with each. Is this important and is it urgent? Right? And so your answer would be yes, 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 no, 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 and so on. And so what that means is that of those 15 things you have to do, the most important tasks are the ones that are important and urgent. And then the next ones are the ones that are important but not urgent. And then the tasks that are actually far less important are those that are urgent but not important. So that's how you can think about the things you have to do. And so if you actually take those tasks and you, instead of putting in a task list, you put into these 4 buckets. So the high priorities, those are the important and urgent. Then the medium priority, those are the important but not urgent. And then the low priorities are the ones that are urgent but not important. And then you shouldn't have anything that's not important and not urgent. Those are the easiest thing to get rid of from your to-do list right away, right? And so when you think about the Eisenhower Matrix, it's really just a way to visualize the task that you have in a meaningful manner, that helps us focus on the work that we have to do. So imagine if you don't use our software, you don't use Priority Matrix, and you just put this into practice today, I think you'll find a lot more meaning in the work that you do. And so, I hope that you'll go, and again, after today's webinar, you're writing down the tasks that you have to do, and then you start putting them into these various buckets. Now, here's the magical thing. Imagine if you asked your coworkers to do the same exercise. Ask them to also write down their task, but also prioritize it into the Eisenhower Matrix. And so what's really interesting is that if you go and then you compare notes and say, let me show you my Priority Matrix, let me see yours, right? And do this with your manager, do this with your direct coworkers, do this with your direct reports. What happens is that you'll start seeing alignment and then also misalignment. And vast majority of the time, you're actually on the same page. There's no question around that. But then once in a while, you'll surface up something that you're disagreeing on, but you didn't even realize you disagreed. And so that's when you're using Priority Matrix correctly. And so I always emphasize to customers and to everyone here today and the people watching this video is that it's good. It's very, very good when you have these heated conversations around, wait a minute, why is it that, this is a quadrant 1 and why is it that this is a quadrant 2, right? And so focus on those key points. And so when you're having a conversation with each other, don't talk about the things you agree on. That's easy. No, you're good, right? Don't forget it. Forget that. Talk about the things where you disagree. And so the key thing with Priority Matrix is that when you walk away from that meeting, you walk away from your conversations, your one-on-one with your manager, that both of you can go and open a Priority Matrix and see exactly what everyone agreed on. So I hope you take that into account when you're using Priority Matrix. It's not just about the priorities at this moment, it's the priority alignment moving forward. And so the 4-quadrant Eisenhower Matrix creates alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. And that's what makes it difficult, and that's what makes it worthwhile. So a couple of tips to shortcut your success before I jump into the product itself. If you're a manager, create a project for your team staff meetings and screen share during meetings. It is such an easy exercise. Even if you don't use Protomatrix with your coworkers, do this because it's going to help you focus your conversation. One of the challenges I've seen over and over again when people have their staff meetings and their weekly check-ins or whatever is that everyone goes around the table, talk about the things they're working on, but guess what? They're talking about things that's top of mind. It's the same problem that applies when you talk about your task. You're going to talk about that last email you just got, that problem you just faced. And so when you actually have a project that's tracking the priorities for your team, you can focus on quadrant one, making sure that everyone else is updating and talking about the challenges that they said were the important and urgent task. So it's not so obvious, but I hope you take that into consideration. Now, if you're managing multiple sites, multiple locations, or multiple projects, create a party matrix for each of those sites, locations, project, or whatever. And so when I say party matrix here, it means literally a separate Eisenhower matrix dedicated to each of those different locations. The reason you do that is because every location, every project, every initiatives have their own priorities, right? And so you want to be able to go and sort of be able to understand how that fits in within the bigger picture. Now, if you follow specific training programs, as an example, let's just say if you have an employee onboarding process or a client onboarding process, and so within that, maybe you have 30 things you have to do. It's a checklist, but they still have priority levels. And so what happens is that you can actually create that in Matrix, and then our software lets you turn that into templates and Excel files and CSV documents that you can use over and over again. The cool thing about that is that then when you onboard a new customer, you launch from your Party Matrix template, and Party Matrix will automatically set the start date for you and then propagate the rest of the start dates and all these other priorities automatically. If you're a business owner, create a project for each of your departments, each of your teams. And so, I mean, this really applies in so many different levels because at the end of the day, we all own something, right? In some ways, you're responsible for your team, you're responsible for your business, you're responsible for your departments, you're responsible for your own work, your family, whatever it is. And so it just says that, if you go and you create these different Eisenhower matrix, then you can look at it and you can see the big picture. And then lastly, if you're an individual contributor, create a project for your goals to help you get your promotions. And so to me, the reason why I emphasize the promotion aspect of it, it's not about the promotion, but it's about making sure that you work on something that matters, right? And so promotions is just a result from you working on the right things and taking on responsibilities. So just keep that in mind. So what that means is as you're thinking about Matrix, really it's a linear combination of these, right? You could be a combination of multiple of these roles that I just talked about. So you may have a lot of projects. Now, one thing I want to say too is don't be afraid to create projects. I have more than 300 projects in my Matrix, and it's because they serve different purposes. And so Matrix actually does a really good job to help me understand what it is I need to work on today, despite having all of those projects. I do want to say that this webinar and then previous webinars are on our website at affluence.com/webinars. We also have it in other languages and so forth. So if you need to review this, you can always go to our website there. Now with that, let's jump into the product itself. And so I'll try to help you put this into practice. So here I have my Party Matrix open. So when you install Party Matrix or you run our software on the desktop or the web app, this is what you'll see, okay? So here's how it works. What happens is on the left-hand side, you have your list of projects. And so earlier I talked about how you may have so many different projects and so forth. Well, that's what they are. And so as you can see here, I have my personal priorities, my weekly staff meeting, my goals for 2025, and so forth. When I select a project, then it has these 4 quadrants, right? That's the key. And so with Matrix, there's a 4 quadrant attached to every single one of these projects. So you can see how I have high priority, medium priority, low priority. So let me start by actually creating a task. So I click on add item, and I'm going to say follow up with webinar participants which is something I'm going to do. But then Party Matrix uses what's called natural language. So I can just go ahead and say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. and I press enter. And so as you can see, I can actually keep on typing task. And actually that's a very powerful way to capture all your ideas, because with Party Matrix, you don't have to click a bunch of buttons. You just type and capture whatever is that you want to capture. And so I'll go ahead and press enter. I'm going to create just one task here. And when I create that task, I can select it. And now on the right-hand side, I have what's called my item details. And so these are the information related to this task. So of course, this is the task name. I can edit this as needed. The project it's in, I can move to another project if needed. And then I can start the task just as a way to help tell me, hey, this is what I need to focus on. And then I can attach an icon if needed. So for example, I can choose colors, or I can choose numbers, or you can actually choose one of these, red, yellow, and green, right? And so just as a way to say, you know what, this is something that's behind schedule or on schedule and so forth. And then down below that, I have owner. And so in this particular case, I created this task for myself, but if I needed to, I can actually assign to a coworker. And now what happens is Eugenia is the owner of this task, and I'm a follower of this task, and then I'll get updates as that work gets move forward. And then next to that, I have progress, effort, reminders, and dates. Now, one thing I want to emphasize is that the most important features in Matrix are the following: due dates and reminders. And so when we think about priorities, of course, we talk about, the quadrants and high priority, and, this is a high impact task and so forth. But you cannot properly understand how it fits in within your own timeline if you don't have due dates. So I strongly recommend that for any task that's truly important, make sure that you set a due date for it. And it doesn't mean that you actually have to get it done by that date, because you can always change it, but it's just a way to make sure that we block our calendar, we block our time. But there's a big difference between due dates and reminders, and let me explain. Let's just say you have to work on taxes. Taxes due April 15th. So you set a due date for April 15th. As the due date approaches, right, maybe it's on your mind, but then if you wait until the due date and then you try to get it done, you're not going to get it done. It just takes way too much work to gather all the information. And so therefore, you actually want to make sure that you set a reminder ahead of time, so you're actually capturing all the information that you need. So one of the things I like to do is actually, I'd like to do down here in this conversation part, I would say remind me daily, or remind me weekly, or remind me monthly, whatever it is. And what happens is, again, Matrix uses natural language to send me those recurring reminders to make sure that I start on this task and actually get it done. Now, it's a very subtle thing, but what happens is that, we tend to think about a task when it's due, right? Because it's top of mind. But then what happens is that right after the due date, we actually start thinking about it less and less. And so therefore, by setting these recurring reminders, even if the due date passes, I'm actually I'm getting reminders to make sure that I get this done. And so I strongly recommend that you set the due dates and you set these recurring reminders for the tasks that are most important. And then down here is the chat. And so you saw how this is where I typed in a command to Matrix, but at the same time, it's a place for my team members and I to have a conversation. And so when you use Matrix on a personal basis, guess what? This chat is not for you to communicate with anyone else. It's just for you. But if you start assigning tasks to others, then it's a place for you to talk to each other. But for yourself, it serves as a history of all the changes that you have. And also it's a place where you can type reminders. You can type commands for reminders, due dates, and so forth. Then in the notes section, you can have subtasks, you can have basic notes, and then we have this thing called Fill with AI, which is really just one of our tools to help you fill out the subtasks. So as you can see, when I type with that, Matrix create a bunch of subtasks for me, and then I can actually just mark each of these as complete as I walk through my own process. This is just something for you to play with and explore if it helps you break down complex tasks into smaller tasks. In the resources section is where you can attach files, documents, links, and emails. So let's talk about emails for a second, because I think that's the number one reason why a customer comes to Matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and open my Outlook here. So let's just say you get an email that's very important, right? But you can't respond to it today because one, maybe you have to assign to another person, or you need to follow with somebody to get that information, or you need to prepare the documents. So what do? If you're like most of us, you flag the email, right? You mark it as unread, and you hope that you remember to look at it. The only problem with the flagging is that if you have 5 flag emails, maybe you'll find it. If you have 50 flag emails, good luck. And so with Party Matrix, what I can do is actually I can take an email, and if I'm in Outlook, I click on this apps here, and then you can click on add apps, and you add something called Party Matrix, turn emails into task. And so this is our Outlook extension. It works inside Outlook. I can click on this option now. I choose prioritize email. And when I do that, the right-hand side pops up this panel that allows me to capture the email and convert it into a task. Now, what happens is that it takes the subject as an item name. Again, I can change this. I can actually organize it. I can choose what project it goes in. So let's just say if I get an email and I need to delegate it to another team member, right? I can actually choose what project it goes in, and then I can choose what quadrant it goes in. So now they know exactly what priority level it is. And then finally, I can even assign it to somebody else, and then go ahead and set a due date for next week. And then I click capture email. Now, what I've just done is instead of flagging the email, I've taken the email, prioritize it into the right context, put it, say that this is important, urgent, assign to the right person with the due date. And so you can imagine how big of a difference that would make when you have an important email, right? And so now on a day-to-day basis, I can do this with all the emails that come in. And then guess what? I'll get those reminders for those due dates. I see it on my calendar, and I know that I got to answer this email. Now, my coworker, what happens is that they'll get a notification that I assign them this email. And when they go to the resources section here, that email's uploaded. They can click on that email and both respond to it, or they can have a conversation with you right down here. So what that means is they can say, oh, hey, here's that draft or proposal or document or quote, whatever it is that you need in the resources section. And then now everything's on the same page. Then it gets even more powerful when you have multiple people involved in these emails. Or if the customer sends a follow-up email, you could even click on here again and choose Party Matrix, open Party Matrix, and attach multiple emails to an existing task. So Party Matrix gives you this really good control over the emails. And then importantly, what it allows you to do is make sure that that email does not get dropped, right? And that's the key. If you forward an email to somebody, guess what? You don't know if they're going to read it, right? You don't know where it fits within the bigger picture of the thousands of emails they may get. They don't know whether or not that email is important compared to the previous email, and then they don't know which context it is. So you can imagine why our Outlook integration is so powerful there. Now, if you use Outlook, you can also install Party Matrix as a universal app. So on the left-hand side here, you can click on this 4 quadrants, click Add Apps, and again, add Party Matrix. So actually, this is a separate app add-in compared to the extension here. But once you add Party Matrix, you can actually pin it on the left-hand side. Now, while I'm inside Outlook, I can get access to the entire Party Matrix application. The reason this is important is that because it reduces your context switching. I'm sure you guys have so many apps that you've used, so many apps that's open, so many windows, tabs, and so forth. And one of the things that I hate is actually having to switch between all these different apps and browser and all that just to get access to my task. So with Party Matrix, we're probably the most integrated solution within the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's inside your Outlook, inside your Microsoft Teams, inside Office 365, and then, of course, accessible within the desktop apps too. So here, I'm in Outlook. I can open the entire Party Matrix application. Now, earlier, I assigned a task to my coworker, right? Well, guess what? When they open Party Matrix, they get these views up here that include such as the new assignment. And so when you use Party Matrix and people assign you tasks, guess what? It pops up right here and it shows you the number of new assignments that you get. And so it makes it very, very easy for other people to see what it is that they need to do. In fact, this is something that we're really focused on, which is to bring you relevant information when you need it. And so if people assign you tasks, it will show up here. The fact that I assign an email to Tyler, when he logs into Party Matrix, he'll see it here in new assignments. And then what happens is that you can also mention people or set due dates and so forth, and Party Matrix will automatically surface that up. And then if I have tasks due today or this week, I can actually click on this and it actually takes me to the agenda and it tells me what it is that I need to work on at this very moment across all of my Party Matrix. So now I'm back to Matrix, and let me walk you through a couple of other things. Let's talk about project creation, because I mentioned how, you should create a project for your personal priorities and then your team priorities. Creating a project in Matrix is very, very easy. You just click on this plus right here and then choose project. And then when you create a project, you have a couple of different options. You can always choose a blank project. And so if you do a blank project, very straightforward. You type in the project name, could be anything. It could be an initiative, it could be my priorities, it could be my team priorities, it could be something that you're working on. And then you can associate with a user group. So if you use Matrix very broadly within your company, you can actually assign it to marketing, to sales, or to different regions and so forth. So you can click on this and choose that, and then you click on this little eye icon to manage your team. The beauty of using groups is that it allows you to actually add people automatically. So if you have a particular team and then you have a new team member, you just add them to the user group and they automatically get access to all the appropriate Matrix projects. And then if they leave that organization, you remove them from the group and then they lose access to all those projects. So that's how groups work. So if you use Matrix with your team or your organization, definitely check out how group works. Then you can choose colors. And so the colors don't really matter from functionality standpoint. It's just a way to organize what you have. So, I like to color code, for example, different departments or different types of projects, and that's something that you can come up with. And so now if we click on back here, I have a couple of other options. I can go to what's called public templates. And so here at Matrix, we've generated something like 1,000 templates for you to use for free. And it's just from, all the experience that we have and different ways to organize and customize Matrix. And so you can see some of our public templates here. For example, you can choose 30, 60, 90 day. And that's just a template where if you're a manager, you might want to create quarterly goals. Very, very straightforward. And so every single quarter, maybe for April 1st, maybe July 1st, whatever, you just create one of these projects and then you start highlighting all the goals that you have for the quarter, and you're able to share that with your manager and your team members. So do that every single time. Now, I mentioned how you can actually build these templates and then you can actually save them. So what happens is that I have my own templates too that share with my team here. And so for example, maybe I have an employee onboarding template because I'm onboarding a new employee. I select that option, I select their start dates, I click use template, and Matrix will create all the tasks, all the priorities within that project, and then set all the due dates automatically for me from that start date. So it's an extremely powerful way to save your time and effort. And then lastly, you can create a project with AI. So what that does here is that you actually just type in your goals, whatever they may be. Maybe you want to improve your operation efficiency. Maybe you want to improve your website. Whatever it is, you just type that in, click on next, and Matrix will go and try to create a series of tasks for you. And then from there, you can leverage that for your brainstorming, right? And then use that and pick and choose whatever you want. And then the last thing is import from CSV. So Matrix has a really, really powerful export and import from CSV. So I know, many people are very, very proficient at Excel. And, I love Excel for that same reason, which is you can go and do all sorts of analysis. Well, Matrix allows you to export to Excel or export to CSV and open Excel. Then you can build reports on that, and then you can actually import it back too. So very, very powerful way to work with your task. And so that also helps you feel comfortable with Matrix, because it means that when you create tasks in Matrix, you can easily save them, right? And then also, if you already have existing tasks in other systems that are in CSV format, can be export CSV format, you can import into Matrix really easily. So that's how you create different projects. So now let me go back to here and let's walk you through a couple of other features in Matrix. When you select a project, right, what happens is if I select a project, on the right-hand side, I get what's called the project details. This is where I can actually, again, customize the project name. I can star a project. If I star a project, it pops to the top of my list here. So as you can see, when I have 300 projects, I'm not going to go through and look at all of these. And when you get started with Matrix, I recommend that you have like 5 to 10 projects or something. And then over the course of 6 months, a year, you might end up with dozens of projects. It starts getting to be a lot, right? And so you star the projects that are active, the project that you care about. Then you can also go to the top right here. You can choose to pin a project. If you pin a project, it goes to the very top of the list. So for example, for me personally, I have around 3 pin projects, 3 to 5 pin projects, and these are the one that I check in every day. So, when you pin a project, it's just for you, right? No one else has that project pinned, so it allows you to focus. But when you start a project, it stars it for everybody on that project. And so as you can see in this top right menu, there's a lot of other options too, including export to CSV, import from CSV, save project as template, and so forth. So that's something that I'll let you explore as you use Protomatrix. Then down here, I can choose team members. So I mentioned user group, and so you can use user group automatically, but I can actually have complete control on who gets to be in this project. And so I can select people and I can invite them in. Now, when you have a project that's shared with others, they get to see all the priorities too. So when you go and you create that team project, right? So as if you're a manager and you have 5 direct reports, create a project called team priorities and invite all your 5 people. That's it. And so now everyone's on the same page. When you have that meeting, you open up that share project. Again, you have that discussion on your key priorities and then have that heated argument, right? And hopefully you'll come to a resolution. And then after the meeting, anyone can go back to that project and see exactly everything that you agreed on. So just think about that for a moment, how impactful that would be. Where people like that happens all the time, right? People will have meetings, walk away from the meetings, and no one's made any decisions. You have no idea what everyone stands on anything, and so that's just a waste of time. But by using these shared projects, then you know that, hey, when we go back to our desk and we look at Pretty Matrix, this is what we've agreed on. And so when you don't have that disagreement, then you can truly focus and spend your time on the most important task. Down here, you can actually customize the quadrant name. So we talk about high priority, medium priority, and so forth, but really you can change this to whatever naming convention that you want. You literally just click on each of these quadrants and then type in some new text. So for every organization, as you learn Party Matrix more, you'll start customizing it to your needs. And then you can even click on this and change the colors as well. And then down here, actually, one of the things you can do is you can actually get linked to the project calendar. So what that means is you can actually subscribe and add the calendar for this specific project to your Outlook calendar or your Gmail calendar or whatever it is. And then one of the things I want to show you real quick too is at the very top right here, you can choose what's called copy link to project. Now, as you use Party Matrix more, you might create a lot of different projects, and some of them are really sub-projects, right? So imagine your goals for 2025 is something that's really, really broad. But then within it, you might have a bunch of tasks that themselves are a project. Well, Party Matrix lets you create this fractal, pretty much, where you can actually drill down from a project in a task into a project and so forth, and you can keep going. So here, I'll go ahead and copy this link to project, and then I'm going to go to my personal project here. I'm going to create a task, but instead of typing a task name, I just paste that link and I press enter. And so now when I do that, you can see how Protomatrix automatically realizes, wait a minute, this is a project. And so it actually shows me the status for that project. And then it also shows me how many tasks in what quadrants. And then when I want to, I can click on this and it drills down into the project itself. So it's a very powerful way to organize your information. It's a powerful way for high-level managers. So if you're an executive, right, you might have many, many projects you want to see, but you're not going to dive, drill down on each. Instead, you actually create a dashboard project that links to all these other projects. And so from one central Proto Matrix, you can see all of these tasks and know exactly the status of each. Okay, let's switch gear a little bit and talk about how to use Proto Matrix on a day-to-day basis. So one of the things that happens when you open a Proto Matrix for the first time or on a, for the day is you go to what's called the home view. So the home view has what's called alerts. And this is where it tells you where there are tasks that requires your attention. So as you can see, there's actually several categories of tasks. And so you might have 0 alerts, which means none of these exist, or you might have different types of alerts depending on if you're a manager or if you're a individual contributor, or people assign you tasks and so forth. So as you can see, I click on all alerts and I see all my tasks here, but also I can click on assignments. These are the tasks that are assigned to me. And then all those due dates and reminders, they trigger right here, right? And so if I have a very important task and it's due, guess what? Matrix will remind me. And if I forget, it'll keep on reminding me. And then lastly, there's all these other categories as well. So when you start your day, when you go to the home view, what I recommend is usually check your assignments, right? These are the tasks that people assign to you. And then sometimes you'll get what's called a mention. And so a mention is where someone ping you specifically and say, hey, by the way, can you take a look at this? And you'll see it say, it'll say mentions, and you'll click on that and you'll see the task. And so if I click on the task, it actually opened the item details here on the right-hand side. I can chime in, I can mark the task as done, I can update it as needed. Okay, so that's how you start your day. And then what happens too is that you can click on what's called agenda. And agenda, as you can see, is the same link that we talked about here earlier this week and today. Agenda shows me the tasks that I have, but you can go to this top right here and choose item I own, right? So if you are working by yourself most of the time, you choose item I own. If you're a manager, you actually want to choose item I follow. So what that means is that it lets you see the tasks that you assign to other people. So for example, for me, I tend to have items I follow because I assign a bunch of tasks to various folks. And so from here, I can see what are the things that's on people's plate directly. And so I can add tasks directly from here as well. So that's how you start your day. So when you go through these different projects and so forth, just keep an eye on these various tabs here to make sure that you're working on those critical tasks. Now, one of the things that you can do in Matrix too, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my web view here, is actually I can switch views. So I talk about the quadrants over and over again, but in reality, Matrix lets you take that same information and put a different perspective on it. So I can go to what's called the list view. The list view shows me all the tasks that I have, but it lets me sort. So actually, this is actually a very easy way for me to see everything that I have to do and sort them by overdue, or sort them by owner, or sort them by name. And then I can go to what's called the Kanban view. The Kanban view is very good for project managers because it shows you what are the tasks you have to do, what are the tasks that are in progress, and what are the tasks that are done, right? And so if you create a project in Matrix and you have very, very well-defined tasks, these are the 30 things we're going to do for this initiative. Let's get them done, right? And so when you go to the Kanban view, then you can start seeing, okay, how many do I have left? And so if you need to generate a report for others, this view gives you all that information that you need. Then you have the calendar view. So every task that have due dates would have show up on the calendar view here. I can actually just drag and drop if needed. I can create tasks directly. I can move to various other months and so forth. And then I also have what's called the Gantt timeline view. And so, if you're a project manager, what happens is that sometimes you need to look at things that are due far, far out. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you have something that's due this week, right? That's very easy to see in your calendar. But if you have something that's due in 5 months, your calendar is not going to show that. Oh, you can't plan that out. So Matrix actually has this timeline view that lets you zoom out. And so as you can see, I can see tasks all the way out to 2028, right? And so that gives me a perspective on how everything fits together. And so every project has all these different layers that you can apply that lets you focus. Now, there's one really powerful feature in Matrix, which is the ability to filter and generate reports. So we actually have amazing filter systems. And let me explain what that means. Let's just say in a project, right, you want to know, okay, these are all the things that these are all the things in our quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 and so forth. But then what are all the things that we finish? So you can actually click on filters and then you can go and choose what are all the things we finish, okay? And then not only that, you can say, what are all the things we finished in a specific quadrant? Or what are all the things finished by a specific person? So in here, what I've just done is I've just created a filter that says, these are all the things that I finished in this particular project. Very straightforward, right? But imagine if I have to fill this out because I'm putting in my performance reports. Well, Matrix lets me go to click here, select all, and then generate an email report or a CSV. I'll go ahead and choose email report. And the moment I do that, Matrix generates an email report for me, and I can copy and paste this into my performance review system. So when you use Protomatrix, all that information that you're creating, your marketing is complete, it's actually is there, and Protomatrix will help you surface that information up for whatever it is that you need. And so this is an amazing feature that most people have a hard time figuring out on their own, but hopefully because you're here and you're watching this webinar that you start using this. But the same thing applies where I could have generated this email report to send to my client to tell them all the tasks that I'm working on, right? Or all the tasks that I finished, or all the tasks that's pending, or all the tasks that's still to be done. Or you can send it to your executive team and so forth. But here is where it gets even more interesting, which is Protomatrix lets me do this on a global level. So here I show you the various views within a matrix, but on the left-hand side, I have the same view. So I have, for example, the calendar view across all of my projects. And so I can go and actually aggregate all my projects together into a super calendar. And from the super calendar, I can again choose the specific users. I can choose the specific quadrants. So imagine if you're a manager and you want to know, oh, by the way, which of my team members are so busy in the coming weeks, right? Or whose has a lighter load than everybody else. Simply go to the calendar view, select the quadrant if needed, select the person, and now you can actually see their entire calendar and the priorities for the coming months. Same thing in the search view. When you go to the search view, this is your global list of every task that you have access to. Now, you won't be able to see tasks that you don't have access to. So what that means is it's for all the projects that you're in. But from this view here, I can again click on filters. I can actually group them by project. And then I can choose the state of the task again. And then I can select the task that I want. And then I can go ahead and export it as a CSV or email it. So let me show you what a CSV export looks like. So here, for example, when I export a project in Protomatrix, it actually gives me all this information around every single task. The task name, the status of the task, the icons if they exist. And then guess what? If I actually track the effort that I spent on every single task, I can actually build a whole report on how much time I spent across different tasks, or if I need to bill my clients, that's something that I can do automatically from this view. So again, I want to emphasize how what Protomatrix is able to do is lets you export that information. And then what happens is that you can actually go back to the same Excel sheet, create your own where you have name, due date, start date, and owner. And then the moment you create this Excel sheet, you can just go to import from CSV and you can create a whole project from the CSV project, from the CSV file. So the use case for this is pretty straightforward. Imagine if you have a particular routine that you go through over and over again, right? You can build that whole routine and template and process within CSV or Excel file and then import that into our system, and vice versa. So it's very, very powerful for those who want to take Protomatrix to the whole next level. Okay, so here we go back to Protomatrix. I want to show you one more feature in this particular view, that the global view, that's important, and it's called the one-on-one view. One of the challenges that we all face is that it's hard to know what are the things that we're working on, or what are the things that our managers or direct reports are working on across all projects. When I have 300 projects, I'm not going to go and click through every single one of these projects to find out the tasks that I have. Instead, I go to the one-on-one view, I can select anyone, and what happens is I can actually see all the tasks that that person and I have in common. That means the task I assign them and the task they assign me, right? And so when I have a one-on-one meeting with somebody, I'm not going to go and say, hey, by the way, what are you working on? Instead, you have your one-on-one meeting, you just open up the Protomatrix one-on-one view and you talk through this list. You can say, hey, by the way, I noticed, we're working on these tasks and these are the ones that are overdue. What's the status of these? Should we change the due date? Should we mark them as done? Is it, what do we do with them? And so from this view here, you can see all of that. And again, you can filter, you can build reports. And then not only that, you can actually add share tasks directly from here. So what we what we want to do for you in general is that make it easy to capture information. One of the pain points or the challenges, whatever it is you want to call, that people face is that they'll have a meeting and they talk about all these things they're going to do. 2 weeks later, you get back together and then you say, hey, by the way, did you get that done? And the other person said, oh, I never wrote it down. Oh, I forgot to capture that. Oh, it didn't make it to my calendar, right? So instead, when you have that meeting in Matrix, you just click on add share task, type the task here and say due in 2 weeks, due in 1 week, whatever it is. You click add and Matrix will automatically assign to the other person and add you as a follower. So what that means is it'll show up in your agenda, right? It'll automatically show up in their assignments, and then you'll get that due dates reminder when it triggers. So I want you to keep that in mind. I get a lot of very good feedback from customers with the add share task in the one-on-one view, and I want to hear from you as well. And you saw how when I actually add that share task, I can choose what project, but if I don't choose a project, it goes in what's called the inbox. So the inbox is a catch-all, right? And so this is where you have tasks that may not belong in a specific project, or a task that doesn't really belong in any project. So for example, sometimes I have an email from, related maybe to some personal stuff, and it doesn't really belong in any project. So I just put it into my inbox. And so that's a way for me to capture that task. And the way I do that is what's called the secret inbox. So every single one of you has an address called the secret inbox address, and it's an email. And so when you copy that email here, you can send an email to this address and it creates a task in your inbox. So let me give you the use case. I use an iPhone and I use Apple Mail. So therefore, on my mobile device, I don't have an Outlook integration. If I get an email from a customer and I need to prioritize it, I'm not going to go back to my desk and I'm not going to mark it as unread. I forward it into my inbox. And then in the body, I literally say, due tomorrow, remind me daily, as 2 separate lines, and I press send. Matrix will automatically process that email that I just sent along with my commands in that first line and create a task for me, set the due date for me, to make sure that I get to that email. So that's what the secret inbox is for. And you can actually build automation rules around all of this. So for example, I actually have an inbox address for my project related to Microsoft. So what happens is that every quadrant in Matrix has an email address too. So that allows me to build a rule where if I get an email from a specific customer or a specific domain, it automatically creates a task in my project. So that's a very powerful feature. And the way you access that is, again, you go to the project details, you click on the ellipsis up here, and then you choose Get Secret Email Address on a per project basis. Now I'm going to switch gear a little bit and let's talk about Microsoft Teams. So if you happen to use Microsoft Teams, Matrix is probably the most integrated solution out there. Now, the first thing you want to do is click on apps here, search for Matrix, and when you add Matrix, you can actually pin it on the left-hand side, and this allows you to have access to the entire Matrix application inside Teams. That's the most obvious integration to do. The second is actually when you're in a chat with somebody, you can actually click on this plus here and attach Matrix, but remember that one-on-one view I just showed you? Well, you can click on this plus in the tab, choose Matrix, and add the one-on-one view. And so this allows me to actually have a one-on-one view with every single person that I talk to inside Microsoft Teams, and it shows me the tasks I have in common with them. So if I have a meeting with somebody, I don't even have to open Matrix. I just open Microsoft Teams, go to that person, have that one-on-one view. And then what I can also do in Matrix is actually turn any conversation into a task. So let's just say if my coworker sends me a message and say, hey, could you do this? I just simply click on the text and I actually create PM item, and this allows me to capture a Matrix task directly from any conversation. In fact, this happens all the time. I will talk to a person inside Teams, my colleague inside Teams, and then I'll ask them to do something, and then the person said, oh, by the way, can you capture as a task? Well, that's all I got to do. I click on that message that I sent. It allows me to create that task. I can customize the name. I can assign it to the person. I can choose what project it goes in, set a due date directly from here. Now, as you can see, I can also send Matrix action cards, but there's one thing I want you to do also is set up what's called the activity alerts in Microsoft Teams. So this allows Microsoft Teams to send you notifications of changes in Matrix. And so if you happen to use Microsoft Teams a lot, this is a really, really powerful feature, because sometimes, people will assign us stuff or mention us and so forth, but, we're not checking Matrix. That's okay. Activate this for your team. And then what happens is that when you get assigned task, it actually shows up here into the activity systems. And then also Matrix has what's called a chat bot that will send you messages and notifications and so forth on the task that you have to do. There's 1,000 other integrations in Microsoft Teams that I can't even go through, but we work with Microsoft Automation, so that allows you to create the if this then that environments. It allows you to build any sort of rules. We also integrate into meetings and so forth. So that's something, again, for you to explore if you really want to take advantage of Matrix. Now, one thing I want to mention is that Matrix is the only application that's Microsoft 365 security certified across Teams, Outlook, and web. And then we're also a certified designated solution for modern workplace. So at your organization, if you're trying to take advantage of Matrix, just know that, within Microsoft itself, Microsoft consider Matrix to be one of the top rated applications in all of Microsoft Teams and one of the most popular as well. So just keep that in mind. Okay, with that, I'm going to sum up the things that we've talked about, and let's wrap this up. Today, make sure that you go into Matrix, you install Matrix on the, in desktop, Mac, Windows, we have native applications, or add Matrix to Teams and Outlook or on the web here. Make sure that you create a project for your personal priorities, for your team priorities, and then, create those tasks and invite the appropriate people. And then that's all you got to do. And then when you create those tasks, set those due dates, set those reminders, right? So then and then what happens is keep an eye out for these new assignments, or this is your agenda on the tasks that you have. We'll go ahead and jump back to my presentation here. So make sure that if you use Microsoft Teams and Outlook, I think our integrations there will really help you be more productive. And then what I like about desktop apps is that actually it lets you receive notifications from your tasks directly in the desktop app. And so that just stays top of mind. And so make sure that you create a project to highlight your priorities. Again, set the due dates and reminders. Ask your colleague to also set up their Matrix and then sync up, right? And then essentially just looking at each other's Matrix is enough of a value creation that justifies using Matrix, in my opinion. And then make sure that you set 1 hour each week for yourself to review your priorities. We spend so much time working on things, and we spend so little time thinking about whether or not we should work on it. And so I want to instill that particular philosophy and mindset in you, which is spend time thinking about the work that we should do, then do that work. And then make sure that you compare Matrix with your coworkers. So what success with Matrix should look like on a personal level, you check in Matrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. You have one centralized place to track all your priorities. On the team level, everyone understands exactly what the team priorities are. If you have important emails that's assigned to different people, make sure that you're converting them into tasks and then assigning them and triaging them and so forth, and then being able to see everyone's priorities asynchronously. And when I say asynchronously, what I mean is the following. You don't have to have a meeting to know what everyone else is working on. You don't have to have a meeting to know what you should be working on. And so that's the key, right? Especially, we're not sitting in the same office anymore, right? We're not working in one geography, in one time zone anymore. You can't expect to have a meeting just to get alignment. Instead, you open up your Matrix, you look at your priorities when it's convenient for you, you make those changes, you update, you write those comments and conversations, and then your coworkers are doing the same. And so anyone can check at any point in time and be on the same page. Now let's go back to that checklist that we talked about at the very beginning. Make sure today, install Matrix, create your first personal and team projects, review what's important and urgent for you. And then within a week, make sure that you're reviewing your priorities with other team members. Reprioritize your personal goals and tasks. Again, be very transparent with yourself. This is you, right? This is about how you spend your time. And then check in with your manager. Literally just show your manager your priority matrix and say, hey, by the way, these are my priorities. Do you agree? And then if they assign you something and say, hey, you got to get this done, and you say, wait a minute, I'd be happy to get that done, but what do you want me to drop, right? What should I deprioritize in order to prioritize this new thing? And suddenly you'll find that, oh, actually, no, these previous things you have is actually more important. You'll have very, very good conversations then. And then within a month of using Matrix, you're asking those important questions. Am I working on the right things for my team, for my organization. And then I hope you build that habit of prioritizing your tasks and emails. Make sure you set up that inbox address. And so all you have to do is copy that inbox address and save as a contact on your phone, save it as a contact on your email client. If you don't use Outlook, you can use Gmail. It works perfectly fine. And then make sure that you eliminate those time waster, and then you focus on the most important tasks. And that's all I have for you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have in the chat. Otherwise, you can also send me an email to hi@affluence.com at any time. And I hope this was helpful, and I hope you put this into practice. Thank you. Okay, I see a couple of questions here in the chat, so let me go ahead and address these. Yes, the recording is available, and I'll send the recording to everyone afterwards. Okay, so I have a question here. Sometimes I'm not sure which quadrant my task should fall in. I know that it's urgent or not, important or not, but how should you prioritize? That's such a good question. And so when I think about my priorities, the way I think about it is that if I have more things to do than the time I have to do them, then that's when I decide, what are the things that can wait, and what are the things that I should really focus on today because it drives my goals. So if you have a hard time deciding whether or not something fits within quadrant one, ask a simple question. What would happen if you don't work on it, right? And if you don't work on it and nothing happens, then it's not important. If you don't work on it and nothing happens, then it's not urgent. So that's how you should think about it. And so when you think about your task, just put it into the broader context. And so that is why, my day 30 action item for you is around looking at the organizational goals, right? Because, we all look at our own tasks all the time, but sometimes we forget that we fit within the bigger picture. I read this story around, this particular manager at a Fortune 500 company, working very hard every single week or even month or whatever it is to build these reports. And so, he's so busy building these reports around the status of some particular thing. It turns out that no one has read that report for years. And so there's this manager going and spending all this time and effort doing something because he considers that to be extremely important and urgent every single week. And no one looks at it because that's a misalignment within the goals of the organization. So that's how you want to think about it. The next question, if you make someone an owner of a task, what's the main role of owner and others, because others can change the status of that task? That's a great question. The reason why you make someone an owner is so then it shows up in their agenda, for example, as for tasks they own, but also with Matrix, you can actually build reports on people's workload. And so you can see people's schedule and so forth. So there can only be one owner. The idea around ownership is to make sure that, someone is focused on that task, and that's the person who's in charge. And so with Matrix, we make it very, very explicit that can only be one, and then everyone else a follower. Now, if you're a follower, you'll get updates on those tasks, but it's the owner who actually is responsible ultimately from a reporting standpoint. But other people can mark the task as done. You're 100% right. But still, the owner is the one who gets credit. So would you need a license for each of your team members for this to work? The answer is yes. So it depends on how you use Matrix. But what happens is that if everyone's actually sharing project and so forth, those are considered different users. I assume there's a print option. Yes, so you saw earlier the ability to export Matrix into those emails, into the CSV files. You can also print them, but that's also a way for you to create those CSV files as well. So the way you create a CSV file, I'll show you one more time here. If you go to a task here and you click on this multiple selection, once you select whatever task that you want and you go to share, that's how you can print, email, or export a CSV. And then also at the project level, you can go to the top right here and then export a CSV and so forth. So that's how you do it. And then the question is around the personal level. So if you reach out to our help desk at affluence.com, then we actually do have some personal tier licenses if you don't plan on using Matrix with anybody else. But otherwise, you can also check the option that we have. All right. Well, thank you all for these questions. I appreciate it. If there's any more questions, please feel free to send me an email to hi@affluence.com. I'm going to go ahead and type an email here, helpdesk@affluence.com. This is our main support channel. But thank you so much for your questions, and thank you so much for your time. Cheers. Thank you so much for the feedback.